Have you ever felt like you're drowning in information? I mean, like you're trying to understand something complex, but it's like trying to put together a puzzle with half the pieces missing.
Totally. It's that feeling of wanting to grasp the big picture, but not knowing where to even begin.
Right. You just want that shortcut to knowledge. Well, that's what we aim to do today. Today, we're taking a deep dive into Anicius Manlius Severinus Boethius.
Wow, that's a name and a half.
I know, right? But don't let the name intimidate you. This guy, well, he was a rock star in the intellectual world, a philosopher, logician, theologian, even a political player.
And all of this back in the 6th century.
Yeah, picture it. The Western Roman Empire is collapsing all around him, chaos everywhere, and he's right there in the middle of it all. But somehow he manages to bridge the gap between the ancient world and the Middle Ages.
That's incredible, a bridge between eras. So what made him so special? What did he actually do?
Well, for starters, he was a scholar's scholar. He delved deep into the works of the ancient Greeks. Aristotle, the Neoplatonists.
Yeah, all the heavy hitters of philosophy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But he didn't just study them. He translated their works, wrote commentaries on them, explained them in ways that people in his time could understand. It's like he was creating a whole curriculum for the Middle Ages.
So he was preserving and spreading these ancient ideas, but he also created his own work, right?
Oh yeah, he was prolific. We're talking logic textbooks that became standard reading for centuries, theological treatises that tackled the biggest questions of faith, and
Go on.
this incredibly moving philosophical masterpiece called The Consolation of Philosophy.
The Consolation of Philosophy. I've heard of that. It's about finding meaning in suffering, right?
Exactly. And it's all the more powerful because he wrote it while he was imprisoned, facing execution.
Whoa, talk about walking the walk. That's some serious commitment to your ideas.
Right. So to really get Boethius, we need to understand the world he lived in and what a world it was. Imagine being born in 475, 477 CE, just as the Western Roman Empire is on its last legs.
Talk about a tumultuous time to be born. It must have felt like the world was ending.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to add to that, his family, they were Roman aristocracy. Can you imagine the upheaval?
Yeah.
The sense of loss?
I can only imagine from the top of the social ladder to, oh, who knows what comes next.
It's a time of tremendous uncertainty. But then something even more interesting happens. The new ruler, Theodoric, he's an Ostrogoth.
Not exactly Roman, right?
Nope, not at all. He's from a completely different culture, a different background. But here's the twist. He admires Roman culture. He even gets an education in Constantinople, the center of the Eastern Roman Empire.
So there's this weird mix of the old and the new. The Roman way of life is fading, but it's still influential.
And that's where Boethius comes in. He's got this privileged upbringing, a top-notch education in Greek philosophy. Think Plato, the Neoplatonists.
Soaking up the wisdom of the ancients.
Exactly. And he uses this education to devote himself to what was called learned leisure. Basically, he gets to spend his days reading, thinking, writing.
Sounds like a pretty sweet gig.
It does. But don't think he was just a recluse in an ivory tower. Boethius was also involved in the religious controversies of his day.
Oh, like what?
Well, there was this big tension between the Latin Church and the Greek Church. Different ways of understanding Christianity.
So he was right in the thick of it, not afraid to get involved in those debates.
Nope, not at all. But wait, it gets even more dramatic. Later in life, Boethius actually enters politics, becomes Theodoric's Master of Offices.
That's a fancy title. What does that even mean?
Basically, it means he's one of the most powerful officials in the kingdom. But there's a catch. Remember how we said Theodoric admired Roman culture?
Yeah, what about it?
Well, Boethius was all about upholding Roman values, including justice and honesty, and apparently he wasn't afraid to call out corruption when he saw it.
Uh-oh, that sounds like a recipe for trouble. Speaking truth to power rarely ends well.
You got it. It didn't end well at all. He ends up accused of treason, even dabbling in magic.
Magic? Seriously, what was that about?
Probably just trumped up charges. The point is, he fell out of favor, big time. Imprisoned, and eventually executed. Probably around 526 CE.
What a tragic end. But it's in that prison cell, right, that he writes The Consolation of Philosophy.
Right, it's like this incredibly powerful testament to the enduring power of reason, even in the face of death.
So what's this consolation all about?
Well, it's written in this really unique style. It's called prosometrum. Imagine reading a philosophical essay and then suddenly, boom, a poem pops up exploring the same ideas in a completely different way.
Interesting. So it's not just a straight philosophical treatise. It's got this artistic literary dimension to it.
Exactly, and the whole thing is structured as a dialogue between Boethius himself, the prisoner, and this allegorical figure, Lady Philosophy.
Lady Philosophy. She sounds intriguing. What's her role?
She's like this guide, a teacher who comes to console Boethius in his despair. He's lost everything. His position, his freedom, he's facing death. He's understandably miserable.
I can't even imagine. But Lady Philosophy, she steps in to offer a different perspective.
Right. She argues that true happiness doesn't depend on external circumstances. It's not about wealth, fame, power, any of that.
So what is it about them? What's her secret?
She distinguishes between what she calls ornamental goods of fortune, like all that stuff I just mentioned, and true goods.
True goods. What are those?
Things like virtue, inner strength, wisdom, knowledge. It's the idea that real happiness comes from within. It's about cultivating your character, your mind, your soul.
So even though Boethius has lost everything externally, he can still find true happiness within himself.
That's exactly her point. And it's incredibly radical for the time.
I can see why this book became so popular. It offers real consolation, a way to deal with suffering.
Right. And she goes even deeper. She argues that perfect happiness isn't just found in God, but that it is God. This is like the ultimate source of true happiness.
Wow, that's a profound idea. But wait, isn't there a problem with that? I mean, if God is perfect and unchanging, how can we, as imperfect beings, ever experience that kind of happiness?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it leads us to another really interesting part of the consolation. Book 4. Here, they get into the whole question of God's role in the universe.
What kind of role?
Well, at first, they talk about God as this final cause. It's like the ultimate goal, the purpose that everything in the universe is striving towards. But then they introduce another idea, God as the efficient cause.
The efficient cause. What does that mean?
It means that God isn't just this distant goal, but the active force that makes things happen, that sets the universe in motion.
Okay, so God is involved in the world, not just watching from the sidelines. But wouldn't that mean...
That we have no free will.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the big problem they tackle in Book 5, the problem of divine prescience and free will.
Ah, the classic dilemma.
Uh.
If God knows everything that's going to happen, do we really have any choice?
Right. If God already knows what I'm going to have for breakfast tomorrow, does that mean my choice is already made? It's like a cosmic script that we're all just acting out.
So how does Lady Philosophy deal with this?
It's complicated and brilliant. She brings in this principle called the principle of modes of cognition.
Sounds fancy. What's that all about?
Basically, it means that how we know something depends on our capacity to understand it. Think about it. A dog perceives the world completely differently than we do.
Yeah, their noses are way more important than ours.
Exactly. So Lady Philosophy argues that God's knowledge is on a completely different level than our human understanding. We experience time linearly, past, present, future.
But God.
But God experiences all of time at once. It's this eternal now where everything is present simultaneously.
Whoa, mind blown. So God doesn't foresee the future in the way we do, because for God, it's already there.
Right. And this means that just because God knows what's going to happen, it doesn't mean we're forced to act in a certain way.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. It's like God is watching the entire movie of our lives all at once while we're experiencing it frame by frame.
Exactly. And to clarify this even further, she introduces the distinction between simple and conditional necessity.
Two types of necessity. Okay, let's break that down.
Simple necessity is something that can't be any other way, like 2 + 2 = 4. Always, no matter what.
Makes sense. So what about conditional necessity?
That's when something is necessary given a certain condition. Like, if I decide to go for a walk, it's necessary that I'm walking while I'm walking. But that doesn't mean I was forced to go for a walk.
Ah, I see. So God knowing what I'm going to do is like that. It's conditionally necessary. Given that God knows it, it will happen. But that doesn't take away my freedom to make the choice in the first place.
Exactly. It's a really subtle argument, but it's had a huge impact on philosophical and theological debates for centuries.
It definitely raises more questions than it answers. But that's what makes it so fascinating.
And there's one more interesting point. At the end of the consolation, Lady Philosophy suggests that God's knowledge sets the measure for all things.
That's interesting. What does she mean by that?
Well, some scholars have interpreted that as meaning that even though we have free will, God's knowledge still plays a role in shaping how things unfold.
So it's like God's knowledge is this ultimate framework within which our choices operate.
Exactly. It leaves us with this lingering question about the exact relationship between God's knowledge and our freedom.
And it's a question that people are still debating today. That's the mark of a truly great work, right? It keeps us thinking.
Absolutely. And remember, this consolation is just one piece of Boethius's vast body of work. Let's not forget his contributions to logic.
Oh, yeah. His logic was super influential, wasn't it?
Incredibly. Before the consolation, he was already known for his work on Aristotle's logic. He translated key texts, like the categories, on interpretation.
Those are essential reading for anyone who wants to understand how arguments work.
Totally. And he didn't stop there. He also translated Porphyry's Isago, which is a commentary on Aristotle's categories.
So he was bringing the best of Greek logic to the Latin-speaking world.
Exactly. And he wasn't just translating, he was also writing his own logic textbooks, covering things like syllogisms.
Syllogisms, those classic three-part arguments. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man, therefore.
Therefore, Socrates is mortal. That's the one.
Classic. So Boethius was teaching people how to think clearly, how to construct solid arguments.
Exactly. And he went even further, exploring topics like topical reasoning, which is about finding common ground in arguments. Basically, he was building the entire logical toolkit for the Middle Ages.
That's huge. He laid the foundation for centuries of logical thinking.
Right. And here's something particularly interesting. His focus on Porphyry, who, remember, was a Neoplatonist philosopher.
The Neoplatonists, those guys were all about connecting the material world to the spiritual realm, right?
Exactly. And Boethius saw Aristotle's logic as compatible with this Neoplatonic worldview. It's like he was integrating these different philosophical strands.
Very innovative. And didn't he also tackle this famous philosophical problem, the problem of universals?
He did. This is a big one. It's all about how we understand general concepts. Like, what does it mean to talk about dogness or humanity? Is there some perfect form of a dog or a human out there in the universe? Or are those just labels we give to individual things?
It makes you wonder. Do we create these concepts, or do they exist independently of us?
That's the heart of the debate. And Boethius explored different perspectives on this. It shows how he was grappling with some of the deepest questions of philosophy.
A true intellectual heavyweight. But we haven't even talked about his theological writings yet, the Opuscula Sacra.
Oh, yeah, those are fascinating. In these works, he brings his sharp logical mind to bear on Christian doctrine.
So he's using logic to analyze theological ideas.
Exactly. He tackles complex topics like the Trinity, the nature of God, and he uses his logic skills to identify inconsistencies in ideas that he considers heretical.
So he's not just accepting religious ideas blindly. He's scrutinizing them, using reason to try to understand them better.
Precisely. And he was heavily influenced by Augustine of Hippo, another giant of Christian thought.
So he's building on the work of earlier thinkers, but also bringing his own unique perspective.
That's what makes him so important. He's this incredible synthesis of different intellectual traditions, Greek philosophy, Neoplatonism, Christian theology, and he's weaving them all together in his own unique way.
It's amazing to see how all these different pieces fit together. But let's step back for a second. What's Boethius's legacy? Why should we care about this guy from the 6th century?
It's a great question. And the answer is, his impact was huge. He wasn't just some obscure scholar. He was a key figure in transmitting the knowledge of the ancient world to the Middle Ages.
It's like he saved all these precious ideas from being lost forever.
Exactly. His translations of Aristotle's logic, for instance, became the standard texts for centuries. And his commentaries shaped how people understood Aristotle's ideas.
So he was the go-to guy for logic in the Middle Ages.
He was. And his influence went way beyond logic. Thinkers like Abelard and Thomas Aquinas, some of the biggest names of medieval philosophy, they were building on the foundations that Boethius laid.
And The Consolation of Philosophy, that became a bestseller.
Yeah, huge bestseller. Translated into almost every major European language. Jean de Meun translated it into Old French, and Geoffrey Chaucer, the author of the Canterbury Tales, translated it into Middle English.
That's incredible. It was reaching a wide audience, not just scholars and intellectuals.
Right, and it was inspiring other works of literature. It became this touchstone for people grappling with the big questions of life, suffering, happiness, fate.
It's amazing to think about how one book could have such a ripple effect throughout history.
And its influence didn't stop there. Even centuries later, philosophers and theologians were still engaging with the consolation. Aquinas, for instance, drew on it in his work on the concept of the highest good.
So Boethius was influencing how people understood the very nature of happiness, of what it means to live a good life.
And his definition of eternity, that became the standard for theological discussions about God and time.
It's like his ideas were woven into the very fabric of medieval thought.
And they continue to resonate today. We're still grappling with the questions he raised about free will, fate, the nature of happiness.
It's a testament to the enduring power of his ideas.
Absolutely. So, yes, he was a transmitter of knowledge, but he was so much more than that. He was an original thinker who synthesized different traditions, who grappled with the biggest questions, and who left a legacy that continues to inspire us today.
I think you've convinced me. Boethius deserves a place in the pantheon of great thinkers.
Absolutely. And for you, dear listener, I hope this deep dive has given you a glimpse into the world of this extraordinary philosopher. His life, his works, his ideas, they offer a window into a fascinating period of history and continue to challenge us to think deeply about the human condition.
And as we wrap up, here's something for you to ponder. Boethius wrote The Consolation of Philosophy while facing his own mortality. So my question for you is this. What does that tell us about the power of philosophy to provide comfort and meaning, even in the darkest of times?
That's a question worth reflecting on. And on that note, we'll leave you to continue your own explorations of Boethius's work and the enduring questions he raised. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.